Hi everybody, this is Natalie from Three Circle Studios, and today we're going to see how you can create your very own branding for one of our events. So what you're seeing here is how the event gallery will typically look like when your guests come in to see it. You're going to have a header, you're going to have some overlays on both the landscape images as well as the vertical images, depending on the direction in which the images are taken. And finally, you're going to have the option of creating a personalized footer for your gallery as well. So we're going to go through each of these. It's very important, and what we usually do is that we start with the landscape lower thirds option of the overlay. Why do we start here? Because most of our pictures are taken in landscape view. And if this looks good, we can make sure that everything blends together. So you could make these overlays and these graphics on Illustrator, on Photoshop, on whatever design program that you feel most comfortable with. However, today we're going to learn how to do it on Canva just because it's easier for a lot of people to have the hands-on graphics here. What's very important is that you understand that you could, as long as you follow some basic guidelines, you could do anything you want with this branding. You could make sure you have the logos, you could make sure that you're following your brand guidelines, you can make sure that you have the name of your event and anything else that you want there. So let's keep in mind what those basic guidelines are. The first thing you need to know is that the overlays for the landscape view should be created in a format of 1800 by 1200 pixels. It should always be in PNG format with a transparent background, and the logo should be placed in the corner. So something that we always do is that we place the most important logos on the left side, leaving the middle part of the banner for the event that is taking place. Here you can add the date or any other relevant information, and then leave sponsors or secondary logos on the right, in which many cases we put our own logo here so that people know that it is photographed by Three Circle Studios. I want to especially show you these two because here you can see how you have a full banner, but you can also simply put some logos and some graphics on the side and just leave more space. Something to keep in mind here though is that even if you do use a full banner, it's very important that you leave sufficient space on the top, which is where the main focus of the photo is going to be. So this should be a thin banner, but it should also have some space on the bottom so that we could see any other details that can be important on the bottom of the photograph. So how would you start? Let's look at this mass challenge by Verizon. So we're gonna see the example of how we create this with a test event using the mass challenge by Verizon. So when we get an event, what we usually do, and if this is your own event that you're creating it for, you probably already have this information, but just to keep in mind anyway, you keep in mind what the brand itself is using. So what are the guidelines for your brand? In this case, we had a very clear tonality of blue. We had to use gray, we had to use the Verizon red, and a photograph that included the Verizon band. So keeping these things in mind, we went on to create the landscape overlay. So here you can see we used the banner in this blue color, in the same blue color. We added red accent, and we always made sure that the most important logos, in this case Mass Challenge and Verizon, were big front and center. It's also very important that when you're looking at the name of the event that you're able to give it a hierarchy. So we're talking about the main event is called Community Disaster Resilience Innovation Accelerator, right? So we have a bigger text and then a smaller subtext. You could say the same thing here. We have a different hierarchy between the 24th Annual New England Science Symposium. And again, we have our own logo of Three Circle Studios, but this isn't always necessary on the side. The same goes for our MSN. In this case, it's not really visible, but right here is the the logo of Three Circle Studios. Something that we usually do, and I think it's very important that you incorporate in your workflow, is that you choose a photograph. It could be any photograph. It doesn't have to be the photos of your particular event, but you grab a photograph and you make sure that you put it below your banner, as you can see here, just to make sure that you're leaving sufficient space, like I said before, on the top for everything to be seen, as well as on the bottom, and that you're not choosing graphic elements, or putting words in places that are going to be difficult to read. You want everything that's on your banner to be legible for everybody that sees it. So let's get rid of that. Once we're happy, for example, here with the Art Emerson example, what we're going to do is we're going to copy all of this. Now, what are the specific branding guidelines for this vertical photo? So this is inverted, so now we're going to have 1200 by 1800 pixels, but again, it needs to be a PNG format with a transparent background. And once you're copying it here in place, you could move it around, you could make it bigger, you could play around with all of the elements of your graphic, of your original graphic, and make sure that it fits into this new format. As you could see here, an example where everything fits into place. How can I have that transparent background? Okay, let's try it out. So we're gonna do this Art Emerson example. If you're on Illustrator, if you're on Photoshop, you could just make sure there's nothing underneath and export as a PNG with transparency. But if you're on Canva, you could come up to File, Download. You choose the page that you're working on currently, and you make sure it's a transparent background, and you download it. So when we get the information, we can make sure that there's nothing behind it, and we're just putting on the overlay for the photos. When you open it, you can come to downloads, and as you could see, there's nothing behind it. Okay, so once you're completely happy with these overlays, you could have the same information and once again put it onto the template that you're going to use for the headers. Now, you need two different types of headers. You need a mobile header, and you need, right here, you need a desktop header. So let's start with the desktop. The recommendation is that you do 1200 by 500 pixels at 300 dpi. And here you don't need it to be transparent, because as you could see in our Art Emerson example, let me just go back. This isn't gonna have anything underneath. It's just gonna be the photo or the graphic that you create. So you could either do PNG or you could do JPEG. And this is very important. It needs to be a maximum size of 5 megabytes. Just because if it's heavier than this, if there's too many complicated graphics, our application is not going to accept it. But once again, here you just grab the same design that you have for the overlays, and you could put it in a different style, but the same thing should typically be used for the headers. Here is our Art Emerson example, and if you go to the mobile, you could see that it's exactly the same, just in a different size. So let's look at that size. We have the SMP header for mobile is a recommended 1000 by 1000 pixels at 300 dpi. And again, the file types are JPEG or PNG, and you could have a maximum capacity of 5 megabytes. And finally, we can move on to doing our footer. So what we usually do at Three Circle Studios is that we have just a basic footer that we repeat for almost all of the events. However, you can personalize this as well. Something that is very important here is that the footer allows us to have a link or URL that we could direct people to. So in this case, we're directing people to threecircles.studio, which is our Instagram account. And if I click here, you'll see that it's going to open our Instagram account. So it's very important to keep this in mind so that when you are designing the footer, you could put some of those graphics in there. I'm going to give you an example of our footers, once again, you have to design these in two formats, the desktop version and the mobile version, all right? So the desktop version, you're going to have a size of 1,584 pixels by 396 pixels. So this is going to be a wide rectangle. Again, you could just use all of your branding guidelines, make sure that you have the place that you want people to go. In this case, for example, we have Instagram, like I showed before, but we've also made it with LinkedIn. When we've made it for Mass Challenge, for example, we're directing people to our Google reviews. Here, you could even use it just to explain to others how you could download the QR so that they could spot themselves. So this is desktop, and here are the pixels. Now, the same thing goes for our mobile footer. So the size for our mobile footer, 1080 pixels by 1920 pixels. And again, you could organize the pictures, information, the graphics in whatever way is dictated in your branding guidelines, but making sure that you are being very clear where people can click. Now, let me give you some other examples. As you can see here, you could go crazy with the overlays. You could even make complete frames, although it's not the most recommended thing, but this is an option that you could do, keeping the information very, very clear. These are other examples of what you could do for the headers. This is for the mobile version. As you can see, you could just carry on what you're doing for your branding, for your flyers, for the rest of the event into this branding as well, so that everything can be a unit. So some of our best practices is that we keep it clear, we keep the information to the point so that people don't get confused. Here's another thing about the footers. The footers is a very good place where you can add some of your sponsors and make sure that you have any other information that you want in there for guests to have. This is a good example. This is the mobile version. As you can see, the size is thought so that it occupies the whole screen on your cell phone, and people here usually use it to put a lot of the sponsors. Something very important is that if you are putting sponsors and you have several of them, just leave breathing room for the logos. Don't overcrowd. Most companies don't appreciate when their logos are too close together. So you want to make sure that they have enough space. This is a good example. This would be an example where everything is just way too close together. Okay, so to make everything easier for you guys, in the link in the description, you can find this template, which has all of the various sizes. All you have to do is create a copy, and this will be saved into your personal Canva, and you could edit it whichever way you like. So this is just the title page. Here, the first one is our horizontal overlay. You have a basic banner, which you could switch out your logo here, like we spoke before, put the title. And if you're doing it with us, you could leave 3 Circle Studios or photography by 3 Circle Studios, or you could take it away. The same goes for our vertical overlay, which is for mobile. And you have the mobile header and the desktop header. When you're ready, you could, like we said before, just download. If you download everything together, you'll have a zip file with all of your images that you could send to us. Thank you very much for listening to this video. I hope you had a great time watching and you learned a lot. Goodbye.